Welcome back to the 6th Gear Garage on my never-ending quest to restore this rusty 1980 Toyota long bed and save it from the grave. Now last time, as I was gutting the engine bay, I found an area of rust that had developed between these two panels due to a poor repair. So I went ahead and drilled out hundreds of spot welds and removed the whole entire section. And I have some pretty nice OEM replacement panels to weld back in that I pulled from the Southern Parts truck. However, I have a lot of work to do on this cab before I can weld those new panels on, including some rust removal, patching up some thin areas where I went through the metal, and replacing a very corroded battery tray. So let's get started. While I have the front radiator support out of the truck, is the ideal time for access to work on this battery tray. So let's start by finding all these spot welds and getting this thing removed. And in order to see those spot welds, I'm going to use a wire wheel on the drill and remove this undercoating so I can see where they are. I'm using a spot weld drill bit for this. I'm using oil to help extend the life of the drill bit. And now, chisel them out. All right, I think I have one left hanging on over here. And I'm gonna show you the best sound ever is when that last one pops and the whole thing comes off. Maybe that wasn't the last one. Oh, no, right there, I see it. She's ready. Oh, there it was. So I have a small area to patch right here, but the surrounding area looks really solid. So that's good. Now go ahead and make yourselves comfortable because I've got about a good maybe 30 minutes of grinding with this wire wheel. Wait a minute, why am I using this? Say hello to my little friend. This is the FLC 200 made by Fortune Laser, and it's going to save me a lot of time working on these old rusty Toyotas. This is a 200 watt pulsed laser, which is perfect for removing rust, paint, oil, or dirt from surfaces without damaging the metal underneath. You've all watched me remove rust the old-fashioned way for years now, using wire wheels, chemicals, even electrolysis, and this is the future of rust removal. I know you're thinking, it must be nice to be able to afford a laser cleaning machine, but the truth is, these machines are a fraction of the cost they were just a few years ago. I purchased this straight from the manufacturer for the best deal. I'll put Fortune Laser's website in the description. I opted for the pulsed laser for more cleaning options, and I'm still learning how to adjust the nearly infinite parameters of this machine, but we'll do a full video all about it in the near future. The laser saved me a lot of time in removing this sticky, tarry, rubberized rust preventative that was sprayed all over the engine bay, as well as the paint and primer underneath it. I was also able to clean in all the tight areas that I couldn't reach with the wire wheel.
Well, that was fun. The machine even took off this really thick rubberized undercoating that sprayed all inside of the engine bay. But right now, I'm gonna cut out the bad. Now I need to make a cardboard template, and for that I like to use a cereal box because it's just the right thickness. If I use a cardboard box, it's walled on both sides and it doesn't really bend that well with the corrugation in the middle. Cereal box is just perfect. And this is brought to you by Peanut Butter Chex.
I'm rushing through this process to keep this video short, but have a full explanation of using cardboard to create metal templates in the floor repair video, which I'll link in the description. It really does take longer than you'd think after all the fine trimming to get it to fit just right.
So I've got my patch panel in place, and it's sort of held in place by a couple of magnets, and I also make sure to clean the paint and the undercoating around from the bottom of the weld so I don't contaminate it. Now this side here is sticking up a little bit, but I'm gonna weld this in first and then hammer that down, and it'll be really easy to do once this metal is already warm. Should be good.
It turns out I had a little gap at the bottom, so I had to build that area up a little. Next, I ground everything down somewhat smooth to help locate any low spots. And as you can see, there were quite a few. And then I filled in those low areas with more welds in hopes that I could make this a smooth transition like it was from the factory. And then knocked down any high points. And cleaned up the underside too. Next, I removed the good, or less rusty, battery tray from the inner driver fender from the parts truck.
Now one left. Back corner.
Then I removed the rust from the southern battery tray. And cleaned up some of the grind marks with a mini belt sander.
So I'm pretty happy with the way this turned out. I do have some small areas, kind of like in between beads here, that it's just gonna take all day for me to go back and fill and smooth and get every one of these perfect. So I'm gonna throw a skim coat of filler over this just to get that sealed up so there's no low spots or any more water to collect. This totally is not working on this shaped and recessed area. Honestly, I'd be better off just using my finger. And while this cures, I'm gonna go over here and start cleaning up this edge. You can see where some of these spot welds broke. There's a little bit of like a raised area, and I want to get this completely flat and flush so my new metal will lay down nice and smooth on top of it. And there's a big one right there. much better.
Then I gave the cured filler a quick sanding. And clean up the dust as well as the surrounding area to get it ready for primer. And did the same for the battery tray.
So now that these parts are clean and drying, I'm going to start by putting some primer over this bare sheet metal. Now there's some different ways online that I've read. I'm going to use some self-etching primer first because most of this is bare steel. And I'll also be painting the underside of the battery tray as well with the self-etching primer and get this area all covered because I won't have access to it once this is welded on. And then once that cures, I'll lay this here and I'll mark all the spot welds. You can see they're not all exactly in the same place as the original ones were. And then I will grind that primer off back down to bare steel and then apply some spot weld through primer just on those areas where I'll be welding. Same with the underside of the tray. Then once it's all welded in place, I'll go over the whole thing with another coat of self-etching primer. So let's hang this back up over here. And I'll go over that with some primer sealer. Okay, I have both the top of the fender below the battery tray and the underside of the battery tray painted with some self-etching primer and primer sealer. And I still need to apply my weld through primer, but to know where that's gonna go, I'm gonna have to figure out where all these spot weld holes are gonna line up because they're gonna become my plug welds. So I'm gonna set this here. And I can see some of them are the same, but some are also different. So I think right here is about where that should go. Now I'm going to go to the workbench and grind the area around these holes back down to bare metal before I can paint it with the weld through primer.
And I did the same on the inner fender. And applied the weld through primer.
All right, all of my weld through primer is dried now. So let's get this in place. And there's one more important step, and that is to actually make a scratch through the weld through primer into the base so I can have some bare metal exposed just to get the arc started. So do one there, one there. So I'm gonna do this side first and then weld this side last because you can see it sticking up a little bit. And I have room on this edge here to slip this vice grip over the edge to hold that down flat. Tap this one down a little more flush. And moving on down the line here. It helps too because the previous weld is already warming up the area around my next one. Now I'm going to hit these real quick with the grinder just to make sure they're all good.
And once the welds were all ground smooth, I gave the bare metal one last cleaning before applying the self-etching primer. And a second coat, then primer sealer.
And now the battery tray is done. Although, can't forget about the underside. I had a little bit of filler left over, so I smoothed out some of those rough areas around the welds. So I'm gonna knock this down with some 80 grit and then just throw some self-etching primer over all this because it's eventually gonna have the undercoating over it and you won't see any of these details anyways. dries, let's go over here and start fixing up some of these holes I have on the firewall. As I was drilling out the spot welds and trying to remove the existing fender, you can see I have some tears where the metal is just really almost paper thin. And some high spots as well that are actually left from the original fender that I pulled off that I just need to grind down and make smooth. But before I can weld anything on that firewall, because I'm sure I'm going to burn through in a few spots, let's go inside and see what I might be catching on fire. And I need to clean out this cab. So looking inside here, all those holes are over here behind this insulation, which is pretty much disintegrating anyways. Just pull that out. Oh, this actually caught on fire at one point. Look at that. Whoops. So yeah, the first one starts right here, and you can see exactly where I was flexing the metal and where all the paint's flaking off, going all the way up to right here. And back here was where my original repair area was for all this. It's hard to believe it was almost a year ago when I replaced this floor, this inner rocker panel. Back then I was thinking like, oh yeah, I'll have this thing on the road by summertime. Here's how these guys look, nice and boogery, but they should grind down nice and smooth.
And I repeated the same process that I used on the battery tray, grinding down, filling in the low areas with welds, and repeat to get it nice and smooth.
And I couldn't quite get in here with my grinding wheel, it was too large, it was gonna hit this, so I'm gonna use the mini belt sander on this weld.
And that looked so good after sanding that I went ahead and cleaned up all of the welds with the mini belt sander.
All right, all cleaned up. This might be the best $100 I ever spent when it comes to metalwork and bodywork. I'll put a link to one of these in the description. And I went ahead and cleaned up this firewall as well. Again, not perfect by any means, but you know what? It's good enough for me in this old rusty Yoda. So that's gonna be it for today. Next time I'm going to get the inner fender welded on as well as the front radiator support, and then the cab will finally be structurally sound and I can lift it off of the old frame.
And after I clean up the underside of the cab, it will go on the southern frame that I painted in the previous video.
Stay tuned. Thanks for watching.